Hello everyone, it's Matt here from Prepared UK, and today I wanted to talk to you about a number of things. The first was the Nessmuk knife as designed and forged and scaled by Rhys of VC Works, and along with its accompanying sheath that was manufactured by leatherman Simon Hardies, but also its place within the trio of complementary redundancy blades, as maybe not pioneered by, but as recorded through the work of George Washington Sears. Now, Sears was a pioneer of the Great West, and in the 1880s he designed a knife that was probably his go-to knife for the majority of tasks that he did, that later became referred to as the Nessmuk or the Muck. And Sears' name Nessmuk came from a Native American who he knew as a child, and whose name he took as his pen name when he wrote for a magazine later in his life, after he had finished his adventures in the Great West of America, in, like I say, in the late 19th century, early 20th century. He was very careful, very considerate about what he packed when he travelled, which is a current theme amongst adventurers, bushcrafters, mountaineers, backpackers. And Sears is heralded by many people as being the father of modern lightweight camping. And this was the basis of his trio. At the light end, he had a double-bladed folded pocket knife, which would do most of his fine or lightweight tasks. For his further end tasks, his chopping tasks, he had a double bit hatchet, one side of which he kept incredibly sharp so that he could use it for preparing carcasses of game that he'd felled, and the other side he kept with a general grind that he could use for most chopping tasks in and around camp, preparing shelters and firewood. His middle knife, or the genesis of his middle knife, gave way to Rhys Harris's design of the Nessmuk, which has many of the original characteristics of Sears' original design, but also goes much beyond that. It has this really deep section on the blade here, which gives the blade incredible strength and much needed weight when chopping. It can also be used as a rudimentary spoon, or perhaps a hammer. And I think for the original blade would have been made in carbon steel. This blade's made in 01 tool steel and has got an incredibly beautiful polished finish to it. Like I say, spoon, hammer could also be used as a draw knife, because this part of the blade here is perfectly palm sized. It also lends a little bit of design, or a little bit of a wink to perhaps Lofty Wiseman's SAS survival tool, in that with this very neat kind of taper on here, lends it to being used as a digging tool. And when you pick it up, the whole thing just fits so beautifully in your hand that for chopping, it really is there. I showed it to a friend of mine that I'm out here working with this weekend, and he picked it up and he was like, oh, the balance on that is beautiful. And his natural reaction was to give it a swing. And for chopping, I think that's probably where it departs from Sears' original design. Sears' original design would have had a thin tang in the handle, and the handle probably would have been crafted from antler or from bone, so it wouldn't really have lent itself for chopping tasks, which is probably why he carried the double bit hatchet, to take away the pressure from his middle knife from having to undertake all of his chopping. Within the trio of redundancies, there is the potential there for you to lose one of your tools, but that wouldn't be the outcome that he'd want. The thickness of the blade on this would mean that for battening, it's going to split wood really, really easily, which is going to be really efficient in terms of how much effort you have to put in to creating the kindling for your fire. Sears' blade probably wouldn't have enabled him to do that. It would possibly have been much thinner across here. It probably wouldn't have had the thickness on the backbone of the blade, and with it not being a full tang handle, you probably wouldn't have wanted to risk large chopping tasks or battering tasks with it. Rhys Harris's blade lends itself to pretty much anything you would want to do outdoors. The handle is almost prehistoric. It's 800-year-old yew, so it's going to be impervious to water, it's going to be impervious to lightning strikes. It's a really, really solid piece of wood, but it's been so lovingly crafted that it just sits nicely in your hand, and you're not going to get tired of holding this blade. You're also not going to get tired of looking at it either. It really is a beautiful knife, a really, really beautiful knife, that's going to... When I gave it to my mate to have a hold of yesterday, he said, oh, this is the kind of knife you want to have when you're out in the middle of nowhere, hanging on your belt to do pretty much everything you're going to want to do, especially if you run out of food. And the point, the curve on the blade, really, really nice in here. It's going to be good for preparing wood, perfect for preparing game. And I was first introduced to this by Wayne Rawson of Rawson's Retreat Bushcraft Supplies. It's funny how one thing leads to another, but I originally contacted Wayne because I'd seen on Facebook, I think it was through UK Survival Network, that somebody had been really happy with an antler-handled ferro rod that Wayne had supplied, and I fancied buying one as a present for somebody. And I saw this and had to get my hands on it, and honestly I can't thank Wayne enough for sending me this, because it really is a fantastic, fantastic tool. VC Works stamp, designed, manufactured 100% by Rhys Harris. This one came supplied with this sheath that was designed and manufactured by Leatherman Simon Hardies. It has a little pouch on the front for a DC sharpening stone. Wayne gave me a sharpening stone that fits so neatly in the pocket, I had real difficulty getting it out, so I've not kept it in there. What I like about this is the two-stage holding. The blade fits in and is held really securely by these two press studs here. And then there's also a band on the handle as well, and has a traditional belt hang from the top. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it a dangler, because obviously with it being held here, it's going to sit quite snugly on your belt. When you look at the sheath, the stitching is something that draws your eye, because it is so neat and precise. It's in this contrasting thread, and using a contrasting thread like that, each stitch has to be precise, otherwise the only stitches you're going to see are the ones that are in the wrong place. And in this particular sheath, there isn't a single stitch out of place. The leather is beautifully finished on the edges. Let me just take the blade out again, and when you look at it, the sweep and the curves in the sheath just give it a really, really nice aesthetic. The stitching for the belt loop again just follows the natural curves that recur throughout the whole sheath, and it's just, when I saw it on Wayne's Facebook page, on his Facebook shop, I thought, this is a knife that wasn't necessarily designed with looks in mind. It was a knife that was designed with a purpose. Its purpose being to more than fill that space between a simple pocket knife and a durable, functional axe. The statement that it makes as a tool is undeniable. The statement that it makes as an aesthetic object is just beyond beautiful. And that's why, from the moment I saw it on Wayne's shop, Rawson's Retreat Bushcraft Supplies, I just thought, I have just got to get my hands on one of those, even if it's only for a weekend trip to the Lake District. Yeah. What I have thought is, as this has stepped beyond Sears' original design, with it having a full tang, with it having a wooden scaled handle, and it being as much as a fine work tool as it is a chopper, if maybe Sears' trio of tools could be updated slightly, and to remove part of the weight from the hatchet, and to give a little bit of redundancy to the hatchet as a chopping tool, we could probably step to a full-blown dedicated chopping tool for the hard work around camp, and possibly move towards a finer bladed tool for the rest of the work that you do around camp, but still remaining within the principles of the trio of cutting tools, with each having an overlapping complementary redundancy, so that if you removed one of the tools, you could still do everything that you had to do. That if you removed the tool from the other end, you could still do everything that you had to do. But you maintained the full spectrum of cutting tools for every cutting task that you would need to do around camp. This is the first knife review, might be the only knife review that I ever do. So I hope it hasn't been too, not naive, but I hope it hasn't been too shallow. And I wasn't necessarily going to set up my YouTube channel as a knife channel, but when I saw this, I thought, if I only do one knife review, it's going to be on this knife. Honestly, Rhys VC Works, supplied by Rawson's Retreat, Bushcraft supplies, with a sheath made by Simon Hardies. Absolutely beautiful. So thank you, Wayne. Thank you everybody who contributed towards the creation of this knife. I'll leave some contact details in the description box below, so that if you want to get your hands on one yourself, you would be able to. I am sure if you did get your hands on one of these, you would not be disappointed and you would not regret it. So this has been Matt for Prepared UK, reviewing Rhys Harris's Simon Hardies creation of the Nessmuk, as supplied by Wayne Rawson of Rawson's Retreat Bushcraft Supplies. As always, if you've enjoyed my video, please like, share and subscribe. This has been Matt for Prepared UK. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.